2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk him
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Anthony Witrado, here to talk all things Dodgers. Anthony, it is day number 742 of Teoscar Hernandez watch in free agency. Are you surviving? Are you surviving the drought of Teoscar Hernandez positive updates?
It is very taxing on me and my family. I'm going to give it the rest of this week, and if it's nothing, then we may go just into seclusion for a while.
How we feel? I mean, in all seriousness, with we know some guys are coming off the board. Obviously, Soto has signed. It's been a couple days at this point, and we really don't have much. I mean, Andrew Friedman basically said we want him back. He wants to be back, but if he chooses to go somewhere else, then we've got to live with it. I mean, there are people that are panicking in the vacuum of news that we have. There are people that remain optimistic in the vacuum of news that we have. I'm curious which of those two you are.
There's obviously a market for the guy, right? Or else we wouldn't be in this situation. I also think that the Dodgers know who he is, and they've set some kind of limit, whether it be years or dollars or whatever, probably years, that they don't want to go to. And probably for good reason. It's understandable, I think. And so we're at this sort of impasse where it feels like, to me, he has other offers that are enough to make him go to whoever's offering them, but he wants the Dodgers to get to that match.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. And I say that without any inside information, just based on the comments and just sort of how this thing has sort of stalled a little bit. It's what it kind of feels like in my experience in covering these kinds of things. And you know what? If he ends up going somewhere else and he gets the years and the money that he wants, good for him.
Yeah.
It was the whole reason. It was part of the reason why he signed with the Dodgers last year in the first place.
Yeah.
It was to be in this position. And so I don't begrudge him at all for, doing what's best for him. With that said, I do obviously hope he signs it. As everybody here knows, he was one of my favorite players all season long. But again, I think the Dodgers have certain limits on this thing that they don't want to go beyond. And again, that's understandable as well.
Yeah, it was interesting on MLB Radio. Ralph Mason on Twitter, if you follow him, posted a clip. And I'm not exactly sure who was speaking at this moment, but they basically sort of speculated. They wonder if Teoscar Hernandez has overplayed his hand a little bit, and if he kind of put out a big ask or a big number, and if some of the teams sort of drifted away, and kind of the person talking indicated maybe the Dodgers are more in it now than they used to be, simply because maybe he thought things were going to escalate to a place that they haven't yet. And so maybe he's coming back to his Dodgers, and the Dodgers are going to get a rebound off of this yet again, as they continue to do. And so we'll see. Reality is, I read the Andrew Friedman quote and didn't think much of it. I think it was GM speak for he'd like to be here. We'd like to have him back, but who knows what's going to happen, which I think is just the honest reality of where we are. I'll end the Teoscar portion of this with one quick question to you, Anthony. Is there a number of years that you draw the line? Like, would you go 3 years to Teoscar Hernandez? If he asked for 4, is that the line where you draw the line?
I think 4 is the line.
Okay, so 3.5, under 3.5, you're comfortable. Over 3.5, you're out.
I think that's fair. Yes. Yeah. And the money, I think the money is probably a little bit of a non-issue. I read the comments the same way. Friedman's comments. I don't think it was, I think I saw some headlines that were like, oh, this may be bad news for the Dodgers and a Teo reunion. I didn't see that at all. I just saw it as nothing's happening yet.
Yeah. And
so he gave GM, president of baseball ops, kind of speak. And that's kind of all that was. But yeah, I think 3 years is where they don't want to go beyond it. It feels like, and I think that's reasonable. Look, he's probably a guy who's not going to age well. and he's a guy who probably is going to be suited for DH soon.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers already have that. And so, they have the best one possibly ever. So, look, I understand this from both sides. I really do. I hope they come to an agreement and he's back in Dodger blue. But also, he's got to do what's best for him, and the Dodgers got to do the same.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think we can make assumptions based on what the market looks like and kind of how we feel about a player and the needs of other teams. But sometimes there are guys that for whatever reason, the market does not develop for them the same way it does for somebody else. And look, if we're all sitting here saying, man, the defense is really, really bad and he's going to be a DH in a year and a half or 2 years, chances are every other team in the league is going to be saying the same thing. Now, other teams probably have more flexibility with the DH spot 2 years from now. But they all see the same defense we do. They see the same strikeout numbers that we do. They saw the 1 year pop in a Dodgers lineup where he had elite talent hitting in front of him and pretty much behind him as well. And so who knows where the evaluation lies. So stay tuned is the latest update on Teoscar Hernandez. And who knows? I mean, Anthony and I have had a string of some moments on this show where we've been on when news gets broken. So maybe in the next hour, as these winter meetings develop, maybe an agreement is reached. Hopefully, we hope, with the Dodgers. Let's get to some news. The plan for tonight, we're going to talk about Roki Sasaki. His agent spoke to the media, Joel Wolfe, for the first time. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the latest on a Nolan Arenado rumor and whether or not the Dodgers are making the right decision. We're going to talk rumors about a pair of elite relief pitchers, one via trade, one via free agency, and whether or not you or I would be interested in one of those two. And lastly, we're going to talk Mookie Betts, the Dodgers shortstop. I've got 3 questions about that situation, the revelation from Brandon Gomes that Mookie Betts will be shortstop for the Dodgers. Let's start, though, with Joel Wolfe's conversation about Roki Sasaki. This Sasaki is a guy that we don't know a ton about. We haven't heard anything from him or his camp. For the first time today, Anthony, at the winter meetings, we got to hear from his agent. And I'm going to give you 5 takeaways that I had from Wolfe's conversation, and you tell me what you make of these in succession.
Yes.
Let's start with the first. There was a quote, by the way, from Andrew Friedman saying, we're very interested in Roki Sasaki. So in case you were curious if the Dodgers were interested, he pointed out that he was super impressive, that this is a high priority for the Dodgers, I believe was the quote that he had. And so, take what you will about that. But Andrew Friedman, very interested in Roki Sasaki. Okay, so the first thing that Wolfe said that I found interesting, Anthony, and I'll get your reaction to, he said there's an argument to be made that a smaller market team might make sense for Sasaki based on the negative press that Sasaki has received in Japan because of the decision, the disloyalty in their eyes to ask to be posted at such a young age and kind of earlier than should be expected. He's gotten some bad publicity. Wolfe speculated maybe that's a reason why he should consider a small market team, with the caveat of allegedly, but I haven't discussed this with him yet. I find it impossible to believe this hasn't come up at any point. But what do you make of the idea that because of the bad press he has gotten in Japan, then maybe that would influence his decision whether or not he wants to come to the microscope and the spotlight that is Los Angeles?
I think this is a lot of agent talk to drum up mid-market, small market teams to have interest. I think it's possible that he thinks some teams may not be willing to play in these waters, even though there's limits on what he can make. And so I think he's trying to drum up as much business as he can. It is ridiculous to believe that if he played in Milwaukee,
right,
that he would not still have 4 Japanese reporters on the beat every day. I've seen it. I've seen it for guys who are not Roki Sasaki famous. Yeah. And those guys have those kinds of reporters with them. I mean, relief pitchers.
Four's less than the Ohtani crew that would be following him around in LA.
And in all fairness, that crew's first, second, and third priorities, even with Yamamoto on the team, was Ohtani.
Sure.
And so I think if you're really looking to protect the kid, the Dodgers are probably a better option than most because they have some of that security in players who have made that jump in their prime as superstar players already. And they can sort of, drape arms around him and sort of protect him in that way. But Yeah, I did not make much of it in terms of like this means he's gonna go to a mid-market, small market kind of organization. I don't buy that for a second. I think he's gonna go where he feels like he can win because the margins for the money are gonna be so small anyway. I think he's just gonna choose where he might be comfortable.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, because one of the things he said was, my advice to him was not to make a decision based on bonus pool sizes, given the long-term arc of his career, and basically saying, make a long-term decision, not a short-term decision. But that's what causes me to have pause. I see Scott in the chat saying he just wants every team to get in on the bidding. You mentioned he wants to give every team hope, but like, everybody's already interested. Why does he need to get teams more interested if he ends sort of the scrum by saying money's not the issue here? Like, it's not about getting the most money. It's about making a long-term decision. Like, why would he have to pander to these small and mid-market teams if money's not the issue?
Yeah, I don't know, especially if he's going to say that I haven't talked to him about it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which I'm less skeptical of that being false than you are, I think.
Okay.
Only because I think the reason for him doing this is to be like, yes, everyone come call me.
Yeah.
Versus like they've had this discussion and Sasaki actually said, I don't want to be in a big spotlight.
Yeah. Yeah. It's possible. Okay, number 3 here. An injury update. Last year, he dealt with shoulder inflammation and soreness, plus an oblique injury. It's why he played in less than a full season last year. Obviously, for the money we're talking about here, I mean, this isn't even a low-risk deal. This is a no-risk deal for whoever signs him. But
yeah,
is there any sort of, I know people have been penciling this guy in for 2025 rotation help. Is it possible, given shoulder soreness, shoulder inflammation, and oblique injury, that maybe the short-term outlook on signing a guy like Sasaki, which again would not prevent you or cause you even to hesitate in signing the guy, but is there any update you hear in there? Shoulder soreness, does that give you pause even for the slightest as far as expectations?
it wouldn't give me any kind of hesitation because the risk is so low, like you said.
Yeah.
It's essentially a no risk kind of deal because of the money we're talking about. Now I hear this as a former beat guy, and I think, why would he say that these two things that he's just said that we just talked about?
Right. Why reveal
And
this?
one is he's disclosing the injuries because it's going to come out anyway in the medicals, and people already knew about it. And so if people are shying away, he's trying to tell them, come back to us.
But I mean, again, what's the motivation? Like, I don't understand who would not be interested. Like, who does he need to tempt back into the conversation? And what's the benefit of tempting those teams?
Yeah, I think that because the money is what it is and it's so similar across the board, I don't think there's a great reason for it.
Yeah.
But I do think that like there's reason. Like I'm not saying it's.
We might not know what it is, but he's not saying these things on accident.
No, absolutely not. And the injury stuff, I think he's trying to get ahead of stuff where, as they get into this negotiating period, there's probably going to be stories that come out and be like, how durable is this guy? And he's getting out in front of it in some way in his mind. I don't know. Like it all seemed like just a bunch of like whatever to me with the way Wolfe was talking. And it's kind of how it is when agents talk in general. Yeah. But this was just like a lot of like head scratching. Like, why are we going here?
Yeah. Okay. 2 more observations for you. The second was Joel Wolfe, who in the first part says they haven't talked about small market teams. Apparently, though, they have talked about geography, because he said there was no mention from Sasaki of a desire to play on the West Coast. He kind of said this is an old school 5 to 10 years ago assumption that guys from Japan just want to play on the West Coast. It's geographically closer to Japan itself, but he shot that down, that the West Coast is not a deal breaker. Now, when Ben Badler was on with us, who's a pretty plugged in guy, he kind of voiced pretty strongly the assumption that the West Coast was going to be a limiting factor and that you're maybe shrinking the pool of teams down. But again, he's now opened it up to small market and mid-market teams. He's opened it up to Midwest and East Coast teams. I mean, again, it's the same theme, right, Anthony? Like, yes. He's trying to say everybody come. I guess I just remain baffled at, like, now the Cubs are interested. Like, the Cubs weren't interested, and then now today they heard this, and they were like, hey, somebody find me that video in Sasaki that somebody sent over, and let's see if we want this guy who everybody's talking about and who costs nothing. Like, I just don't understand why he has to widen the net so much.
Yeah, I don't understand it either. I really, because it's not like a Yamamoto situation. If that were the case, then this would make a lot more sense.
100%. If there was no ceiling on the dollar number, absolutely. But he literally said, we're talking about a $2 million difference at most from top to bottom, and money doesn't matter.
And he's playing, so let me, the West Coast part of this is he's right in that, like, it really is a non-factor now, especially with the money that these guys make. So that part I understand, but like and he may have gotten asked. I didn't hear every second of the interview. I just heard and read the clips. So I don't know what preceded that response, but he may have been asked, like, hey, everyone's saying the Dodgers and the Padres are the favorites. Is it his intention that he wants to stay on the West Coast? And maybe that was his response to that. I don't know for sure. But yeah, I think that it goes again to like the small market, mid-market, big market kind of thing. The interesting thing though is that, like, if I were him, if I were his agent, I would be sort of pining for one of those big money teams, especially with the way the TV contracts are playing out currently, and with baseball and Major League Baseball possibly having to take over some of these situations with the broadcast rights and what that does to the pool of money that's there. So a team like the Dodgers becomes much more attractive now versus a team like the Padres, whose TV deal is falling through, or whose TV deal is falling through. Because this guy, while the money is very similar across the board now, he's coming out at 23 when there's a cap on his salary for a reason. It's to hit free agency when he's younger, and that payday, if he lives up to even most of the hype, he doesn't even have to be, the Cy Young guy. He's going to get a contract probably bigger than Yamamoto's. And so that's the consideration here. And so that's why it's like interesting to me that, like, he really is so intent on like opening up this very limited market to everybody. And I say limited in terms of like what teams are going to have to spend. Now, maybe he is thinking like, the money's going to dry up for some of these other organizations because of the TV deals. Like, there's a whole list of like speculative reasons that we can go down. But like, again, because of what the baseball economics currently are, I would be angling toward a big market team even more so than I would before.
Yeah. And keep in mind, teams can trade for some bonus pool money. So it's possible that, if I'm being as generous as possible, you widen the net and you say to the Dodgers, like, hey, this team's going to give us the full $7.1 million. If you can get there, if you can go acquire the money to make it equal. I mean, again, it sounds crazy. I do see some people in the chat. GI says if he lives up to the hype, he'll get extended after his first 2 to 3 years. That's totally possible. But again, you would think if that's even in his mind, then he's making a decision, not just where do I want to be for the next 5 to 7 years, but where do I want to be for the next 10 to 15 years, if we're thinking extension as well. Last note here, and this is the one that I think most Dodger fans were waiting to hear the answer on, was a question about the Padres and Yu Darvish. And this is what Wolf said, quote, I assume that the Padres would be a contender because of the it's fair to assume the Padres will be a contender because of the Yu Darvish relationship, but how much that weighs on the decision remains to be seen, was sort of the gist of what he said on that front. Is this agent speak for absolutely nothing, or is there something in there when he says, yeah, the Padres are a contender because there is a relationship?
Yeah, I think he answered that question like as honestly as an agent would.
Yeah.
I didn't see a ton of spin there, because that is what we've been hearing for a long time already. Like, he wasn't breaking any news. And I think the question was posed to him in that way. Had it been, hey, what's his relationship like with Yamamoto? Is there something there? Could that be a factor? His answer might have been exactly the same, with the name and the team just changed. You know what I mean? Like, so totally. I think that what he was saying was probably accurate for, as far as that goes. But I would not read too much into it, because I think there's going to be other factors as well.
If Sasaki has already made his decision and his decision is with the Dodgers, is this the type of press conference that you would give if you were Joel Wolfe? Would you say, hey, widening the net, we're small market, we're open, East Coast, West Coast, we're open, Yu Darvish were interested, serious contender, right? Like, I mean, I'll put the tin hat on here. If you're another team and you're looking at this, and if you're Joel Wolfe and you say, how do I cover my tracks as best as possible if there's some sort of deal already agreed to? Wouldn't this be the exact game plan? He didn't mention the Dodger one time. He specifically mentioned the Padres as a contender. Hey, I'm going to dump gasoline on the rumor that Yu Darvish, and this is we're going to go to San Diego. I'm going to fan out the flames that we're West Coast, East Coast, or that it's small market, big market, like all that stuff. I'm just going to put out every fire that says Dodgers, and I'm going to dump gasoline on every fire that says anybody other than the Dodgers.
That's a good conspiracy theory. That was not one I had thought of. So you always bring sunshine into my life, Jeff. That's good. It's possible. It's actually not that like crazy because they were already getting some heat on was this thing already negotiated basically?
Right.
And so if he is trying to throw people off of that scent, yeah, this is the kind of stuff he would be saying for sure. Then there's so many other factors, right? And trying to look at this as an unbiased observer, the Dodgers seem to make the most sense.
Yeah.
Given that the way they would be looking to set up the rotation would benefit Sasaki, I think more than like a team like the Padres or the Mets could probably do. You have experience in handling a Japanese pitcher who's a star. They had Yamamoto. They have
the internal infrastructure of translators and kind of all that kind of thing, which I think can't be overstated how key that might be.
Right. So yeah, look, it feels like they make the most sense. Does it mean he's going to end up there? I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, this was an interview that was just like kind of a whole lot of nothing. But now I'm thinking maybe there's a little more to it after your theory.
Well, I'm here for the tin hat stuff when we need it. We need it. So we appreciate everybody, by the way, joining us. Over 2,000 people in here on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Hope you're enjoying your Tuesday night. We do have a super chat from Jonathan here, changing the subject a bit as we shift to our next topic. But he says, if CT3 gets traded in a, quote, bad contract swap, who should we get? Maybe Jordan Montgomery, as Danny Duffy might not be ready by spring. There's the inserted Danny Duffy joke from Jonathan. We appreciate it. Castellanos, if Teo goes. We're going to talk about a guy in a second in Nolan Arenado, who's another name who could potentially be on this list. I'll just highlight Jordan Montgomery. He's an interesting one to me. He signed a big contract last year with the Diamondbacks. He's kind of in the same boat as Blake Snell. The market didn't materialize. Yeah. He signed a little bit longer deal with some player options that he opted into because he was really, really bad last year for the Diamondbacks. However, the year before, he was really, really good. He pitched really well in the postseason as well. If the Dodgers were to strike out, let's say, on their remaining starting pitching targets, if Sasaki signs elsewhere, if Walker Buehler signs elsewhere, would a guy like Jordan Montgomery be of interest to you or not really?
Not really.
Yeah. It's a longer deal. I mean, that's the hard part. Taylor, you're giving up 1 year and taking on, I think Montgomery might have 4 more years.
Yeah. Like I that's not a comp for me, I don't think. Because like you going into this season, the Chris Taylor contract is no longer a bad contract because it's actually an asset.
Yeah.
Because teams can now get off of it.
Excuse me. It's one year left on Jordan Montgomery's deal. I had that wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, still doesn't really interest me too much. And look, I'm a big, you can never have enough starting pitching kind of guy. But I do think Chris Taylor can still give you some depth. And like I said, his contract is turning into an asset because it comes off the books. So I'm not there yet on him. Like, I'd like to see if he can do something to start the season and maybe help create that depth. He was much better later in the season. I think we just remember how awful the start of the season was. The first half of the season was for him, and that's still in our minds. But again, if you're going to come off of him, you can do that at any point in the season because he's an expiring deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Scott, I see in the chat, there's a lot of people that are not Jordan Montgomery fans. And again, 6.2 ERA, 5.1 expected ERA, 4.5 FIP last year. I understand the reason for skepticism. Again, I think it's a fair question if we're just swapping money and the Dodgers were in a spot where they needed another pitcher. It's a 1-year deal for Jordan Montgomery. Heck, if you think Chris Taylor's 1-year deal has some value because it's a 1-year quote unquote expiring deal, Jordan Montgomery would be in the exact same boat if these two guys were swapped. However, they're not going to trade with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I think it's a pretty safe bet. Interdivision trades just tend to be pretty rare. We're going to get back to Arenado in a second. David here, though. Could Dalton Rushing be a legitimate option for left field if we don't sign Teo, or is that just kooky talk? Rushing's legit. Again, Ben Badler, who we had on, said the reports on him defensively were really good. I don't think Rushing's going to be ready on opening day would be the caveat. And keeping in mind, the Dodgers' definition of ready is different than the Tampa Bay Rays definition of ready, the Florida Marlins definition of ready. And so I think Dalton Rushing is going to play outfield, a decent amount of outfield this year for the Dodgers, but I don't think he's going to be the opening day guy unless there's an injury, would be my guess.
Yeah, that's
like, I think they signed somebody is maybe another way of putting it.
Sure.
If it's not Teo, or they'll trade or sign somebody else, and Dalton Rushing will remain a backup option.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we see Dalton Rushing in left field in Dodger big league uniform at some point.
Yeah.
And I think they probably give him a run out there. This is assuming they don't sign Teo, because then I think that changes the math here. But yeah, look, I think that, they love flexibility. They love roster flexibility, and this gives them that. It's the reason why in baseball economics, an expiring contract becomes an asset. That's not to say that the player is an all-star all of a sudden. It's to say that his contract is worth something to other teams and the current team because it's expiring. Those things have value in professional sports. And so, I think that for Rushing, he provides them with some options there and allows them to say, maybe they're thinking, hey, Dalton's almost ready. Like, maybe that's why we don't want to go to Ford for Teo. They're looking at this from a lot of different angles that we may not be looking at them from. And this Dalton Rushing situation could very well be one of those tentacles.
Totally. Real quick in the comments, I see some people talking about the differences between Chris Taylor's contract and Jordan Montgomery's contract. Not to dwell on Montgomery, this is more a Taylor comment. Keep in mind that the number for Chris Taylor that you see is that he's owed $13 million this year. He's also owed a $4 million buyout if they do not pick up the club option next year, a $2 million trade bonus if he's traded, and a $1 million option escalator. The 2026 option would increase by 1. So Chris Taylor, basically, if he gets traded, would make $19 million this year. So I know that's a bigger number than most people think, but just keep that in mind when you're working through Chris Taylor trades. There's a trade bonus, there's an option escalator, there's a buyout, etc. We got one more super chat here. Zenji says, does the Fried deal make the Snell deal look even better? Any interest in Haesung Kim if Teo walks, who can play outfield? We haven't talked the Max Fried deal, so we can now. Wow. 8 years, $218 million were the numbers to the New York Yankees. It's worth pointing out, a couple of people have made this point, and I think it's a great one. You have to think of this as like a 6-year deal. The 7th and 8th years are basically tacked on just to spread out the luxury tax hit for a couple extra years. Essentially, he's getting $218 million for 6 years. It's essentially the same AAV if you look at it that way as Blake Snell's deal. Of course, Snell's deal 1 year shorter with some deferred money. I don't believe we have deferral information on Fried and whether or not the Yankees even do that. I'll save my thoughts on how I feel about this. I'm guessing most people in the chat can guess how I felt about this. What was your reaction when you saw $218 million headed to Max Fried?
Wow.
Yeah.
In the opposite way I said it when I heard about the Snell deal.
Yeah.
It's a good year to be a starting pitcher on the free agent market. Think about it like this. And I say this with the understanding that Blake Snell last winter turned down a big contract, according to reports.
Yeah.
Blake Snell, coming off the seasons he had, ended up with the 1+1 deal with the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah. Coming off
and
the
you're
Cy
looking
Young.
at the pitching contracts being handed out right now, including this Max Fried deal for, sure, you can call it 6 years, but the guy's got to be in uniform for 8.
Yeah.
He's going to be on the 25-man roster.
True.
Or they're going to just eat a bunch of money.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, and it makes the Snell deal look much more appealing, I think.
Yeah, oh yeah, completely.
Like,
I mean, look, every single person on this show was aligned in the fact that Blake Snell was the number one starting pitching target for the Dodgers. And we put up the graphic that compared Burns and Fried and Snell. And I think every single one of us had Fried last on that list. That might
Yep.
not be true, actually, but I know I had Fried last. I was not
Okay.
interested in Max Fried. He turns 31 in January, 31 or 32, whatever year he is. He's about to have a birthday. So the number you're looking at is a fake one. But yes, to answer your question, I think it makes the Snell deal look better. The Dodgers only have 5 years with the deferrals. Again, that number is closer to like 160. So it's a pretty significant gap between what Fried is going to make and what Snell is going to make. And I think for the next 5 years, I would take Blake Snell over Max Fried by a pretty wide margin.
Every single day. And what I do think this ends up being bad news for the Dodgers is that this could very well price Buehler out of what they may be looking at. Or maybe it doesn't necessarily price them out. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. Maybe it's more that somebody else is going to give Walker Buehler a big overpay.
Yeah. I'm curious. I understand all of the speculation on Walker Buehler. Eovaldi just signed a 3-year, $75 million deal. Yeah. Eovaldi's quite a bit older. Eovaldi also, like, I don't think I realized he's put 5 consecutive seasons with an ERA under 3.9.
He's been pretty good, yeah.
So he is 34, but like 3 years for that. Like, so I just look at a guy like Eovaldi, and I know the age is a bigger number, but he also has like 5 consecutive years of good performance. So you could tell me, honestly, the range of contracts that you could tell me Walker Buehler signed that I would believe you at first glance is like pretty solid. I mean, if you told me he signed a 1-year, $24 million contract, I don't think that's crazy and out of like nowhere. If you tell me he gets 3 years and $75 million like Nathan Eovaldi, like I probably would believe that too. So you could go anywhere in between those two numbers and I'd believe you. The Buehler thing is going to be really, really fascinated to see. And look, these guys are signing already. And so is that a sign that maybe his market is less than he thought it was going to be? Or is he kind of biding his time? There were reports that he had an offer from the A's, and then the A's go out and make Severino the richest player that they've ever signed, so like we'll see on Walker Buehler. But there's a wide range of outcomes for Walker Buehler. And of course, I'm still hopeful that he comes back to the Dodgers. He did ask about Ha-Seong Kim, who's a former teammate of Ha-Seong Kim's. Admittedly, I have not done a ton of digging on him. I think Teoscar is still going to sign personally.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've looked into Kim at all here. Again, this is not Ha-Seong Kim. This is a mistake that I have made previously when looking up ages in the past. But any interest in a guy like that?
I don't think so. I just because I think there's a lot of options out there, and I think that Hernandez is their first. And I just don't see them being in hard enough on that bidding to make any real noise at the moment. Like I think we would have heard things already about it, and I just don't think it's there at the moment.
Yeah, fair. All right. Speaking of some Chris Taylor trades, there have been a lot of reports around Nolan Arenado, and Fabian Ardaya kind of put a lot of them to bed today. Said the Dodgers are not considering a Nolan Arenado trade, was the gist of it. League sources strongly indicated to The Athletic that a deal for Arenado is not a possibility the organization has considered. I feel like most people are in agreement on this, but I'll ask you, is it a mistake for the Dodgers not to be in on Arenado, or is this the right move given the situation the Dodgers find themselves in?
Yeah. You and I were texting about this earlier, right? Full disclosure. No, I don't want any part of that.
Yeah.
The guy can still pick it, and he's still probably he's a decent enough hitter still. But just I don't think they need to play in that swimming pool right now. The contract is what it is. I think they have a guy who can play third base, who when he's healthy is still producing with the slug. Yeah. So I think they're fine in that situation. And to me, there's just no need, and it's probably a lot more. I think the reason why these rumors are out there as much as they are is because the Cardinals media did a story either yesterday or today that said Arenado has not asked for a trade, but that the front office is very well, their intention is to explore things because they want to quote unquote do right by him.
Well, and I think a report came out today that they've given his agent permission to seek trades. I believe that may have happened today.
Yeah. So I think it is their intention to try to move him. Whether he's explicitly asked for something to be done or not. But I think a lot of this stuff, like, the IG story, like all of that kind of stuff, is probably him really angling to try to get into the organization more so than the organization is looking to go pick up Nolan Arenado.
Yeah. I'll say this, like if Nolan Arenado, if
a lot
the
of thirst
profile
trapping
of
going on.
well, yeah, if the profile of Nolan Arenado existed in like a corner outfield, i.e. a spot where the Dodgers actually had a need, then you could talk me into like a guy who's probably on the decline, but big name, still has a couple traits that are high level in his case, whiff rate, strikeout rate, defense, all very, very good. Like if that profile existed on a spot on the roster that was not currently filled, sure, let's talk. Let's see if we can make the financials work. Let's see if we can swap Chris Taylor. But in his case, you're looking at a guy, the numbers are declining. And again, I've posted this stuff before, but his weighted runs created plus was 149 in 2022. He's now put together back-to-back seasons at 106 and 102. He turns 34 in April. The tax number is $25.5 million a year for the next 3 years. His exit velocity, barrel rate, hard hit rate, all bottom 12th percentile of all of Major League Baseball. And the number that I said scares me the most is bat speed. He's in the 28th percentile for bat speed, which isn't great. Now, the other piece of this that you've already touched on that maybe is a surprise to people that aren't paying super close attention, the Dodgers already have a third baseman who's better than Nolan Arenado on the roster. His name's Max Muncy. Now, he's not better defensively. Okay, Arenado still grades out pretty high level defensively. But I mentioned Arenado, 106, 102, weighted run created plus the last 2 years. Max Muncy's weighted runs created plus is increasing. It's gone from 106 2 years ago to 135 last year. The barrel rate, 68th percentile this past season. Bat speed, better than Arenado's. Not great, 39th percentile, but better than Arenado. And oh, by the way, the last piece, Max Muncy's in year 2 of a 2-year, $24 million contract that, wait for it, has a $10 million club option. So Max Muncy's basically on a 2-year, $22 million deal right now. Yeah. And you're telling me they're going to trade for a guy to replace him that has $76.5 million in luxury tax money still on his contract? This one makes no sense from every level, which is why I'm not at all surprised that the Dodgers via Fabian Ardaya have come out and said, hey, hard pass, we're good. Like we're not even going to let that swimming pool fill up even the slightest. We're out.
There was no front office talk on that one. It was just like, no, we're good, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is kind of, same. I think a lot of the Dodger faithful probably feel the same. Arenado had a chance and he passed on it, and that ship has sailed now, I think.
Yeah. Ravishing Rude says, no thanks, pass on Nolan. Murakami 25-26. Murakami's another one of these guys who's coming over in the next couple of years. So he's got a fan in Ravishing Rude there with the super chat. All right. A next sort of rumor that has circulated that I think is going to be more real than a Nolan Arenado rumor, more from the Dodgers side than anything else, is the story that the Dodgers are pursuing elite relief pitchers. Both Tanner Scott and Devin Williams are guys that have been connected. Ken Rosenthal reporting that the Dodgers and Yankees have expressed interest in Devin Williams. Fabian Ardaya adding that besides Williams, they have also been in on Tanner Scott. Before we break down these two names, let me just give a quick refresher on the state of the Dodgers bullpen right now. There's one guy injured, Brusdar Graterol, so I'm setting him to the side. They've got 8 spots in a bullpen. Because of the Ohtani rule, they can do a 6-man rotation where only 5 of those guys take up spots on the roster. So, of course, if Ohtani's not pitching at the beginning of the year, that may make it complicated. But let's just say they have 8 spots for relievers. Right now, you've got 3 absolute locks at the top, Phillips, Trinan, and Kopech. Beneath them, you've got Vesia and Bonda, neither of whom have an option. Ryan Brazier does not have an option. So that's 6. And then you've got 2 more guys, Edgardo Enriquez and Michael Grove, both of whom have options. That's 8. Beneath them on the 40-man roster, you've got Jack Dreyer, who's just protected, Ben Kasperius, Justin Robleski, depending on what they decide to do with those starter reliever hybrid young guys. So Phillips, Trinan, Kopech, Vesia, Bonda, Brazier, those 6 feel like locks for the team as long as they're still Dodgers because they have no options. Again, Enriquez and Grove both could use an option year this year. Let's get into Tanner Scott and Devin Williams. I'll ask you first, which of these 2 guys do you find more interesting? Williams has 1 more year of team control, would need to be traded for. Tanner Scott is strictly a free agent.
Yeah. Scott is the more he's the more maybe intriguing is not the right word. He is probably the first option because he doesn't cost anything but money.
Okay.
But I am I've always been a Devin Williams fan, and I've always been like, man, if this guy becomes available, it'd be great if the Dodgers could pick him up. And it seems like he's available. So, depending on what the cost is, which I don't imagine it would be like, it's not going to break the Dodger prospect bank, I don't think, given his contract situation and that the Brewers have already basically committed to not bringing him back.
Yeah.
So I still kind of lean Tanner Scott a bit.
Okay.
But man, they're both really good options and very, very intriguing to put into this bullpen because this bullpen's already really good. It becomes probably elite if those guys are in it.
Yeah, and I would make the case with Phillips, Trinan, and Kopech at the back. It's already elite. And Vesia and Bonda, like Vesia probably belongs in that conversation. There's not a team in the league that has an Alex Vesia type arm that's their 4th best arm. Bonda, obviously, we'll see after the year that he just had. But let me give you the numbers on Devin Williams, 30-year-old righty. His ERA the past 3 years, 1.93, 1.53, and 1.25, a whip under 1 in total. Last year, missed 4 months because of stress fractures in his back. But in those 21 2/3 that he did pitch, he was basically elite, like top 5 percentile of baseball at expected ERA, exit velocity, whiff rate. He got a 40% whiff rate last year and a 43.2% strikeout rate. So 2 out of every 5 guys that came up to the plate struck out against Devin Williams last year. 2023, 94th percentile or higher in all of those categories as well. Again, 1 year of team control left. The Brewers had a $10.5 million club option. They declined. MLB trade rumors projecting he'll make somewhere in the $7.5 to $8 million range in arbitration. What's interesting about him, Anthony, he's not a velocity guy. He relies on this nasty, what do they call it? It's
bender.
The air bender that he throws. I wonder if long-term there's more projection with a guy like Williams, more trust in the arm holding up because he's not a 99th percentile velocity guy like Tanner Scott is. So that's one thing to consider. On the Scott side, free agent, 30-year-old left-handed pitcher, so same age, righty versus lefty. Super durable, 150 innings over the last 2 years. We've talked on our show. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. Combined ERA just north of 2. Best average exit velocity in baseball last year, just 84 miles an hour. Did have a really bad walk rate last year, 12.2% walk rate. And the strikeout rate was the lowest it had been in a few years as well. But we saw him against Shohei Ohtani and the weapon that he is. And so I think it's an interesting conversation because, again, one guy you're trading for 1 year of team control. The other guy is probably going to require a quote-unquote long-term deal of like 4 years and a lot of money.
Right. So
you can see the pluses and minuses. Williams is not signing up for a long-term commitment, although maybe the argument for Scott is that you do get a long-term commitment out of him.
This Dodger front office tends to not like to pay relievers like that in that way.
Yeah.
So it tells me that they may exhaust all options on Williams first.
Yeah.
Which I'd be fine with. Again, I don't think he breaks that prospect bank given, the situation that he's in. Maybe I'm talking myself into Devin Williams as the favorite because I think you're right. Like Tanner Scott is probably going to get paid, and it's something that the Dodgers tend to stay away from. And you may look at those numbers from this last season and go, maybe he's on the other side of this. Whereas Williams, you could still say is right at the peak of it. So yeah, look, I think these are both excellent options. What's most likely, I think, is the Dodgers try to get Williams on the cheap or cheap-ish, before they get into like real serious talks with the guy like Tanner Scott.
Tim says 39 players already on the 40-man roster. How can they add more? Well, if they go get Devin Williams, I think that would probably be part of the motivation. Is it's possible the Dodgers are looking at some of the guys that are on the 40-man roster already and thinking to themselves, maybe we clear up a few spots in a Devin Williams type trade because we're moving, maybe it's a Diego Cartaya and one of these pitching guys that are sitting on the 40-man roster. And does that get you a crack? Is it a Robleski and Diego Cartaya? Like, does that deal get you there? Does it Ben Kasparius or Nick Frasso, like Kyle Hurt? They've got all these arms that are on the 40-man roster. Is it possible they can package 2 or maybe even 3 of the 40-man guys out in order to go and get a guy like Devin Williams and kind of kill 2 birds with one stone, so to speak?
Yeah, I think so. I think at least one of those guys probably ends up in the mix. And like even with Williams's contract situation, I think if they bring him over, they're looking to extend him a little,
Yeah.
It may not be for big money or years, but I think they look at this and they go, we want to guarantee and create that cost certainty for more than a year in our bullpen.
And that's the beauty is like, yes, he has one more year and he could hit free agency. But for a guy like him, if he thinks he's going to get $8 million in arbitration and you say, hey, we'll give you $36 million over 3 and we'll just rip up the last year of arbitration. So you get a little $4 million bump this year and then $24 million guaranteed after this one. If you're a pitcher, you're looking and saying, is 228? Like, could I do better a year from now than that? Do I want to be in LA? All those sort of questions. So I think you're onto something there as well. Another super chat here from Jonathan. Andrew Friedman needs credit for buying off cycle to get deals. Got Betts, Freddie, Otani, Yoshi. When COVID/regional sports networks handcuffed others, skipped the nuts 22 and 23 offseason. I think absolutely, Jonathan. He got guys like Freddie on a rebound. He got Mookie when nobody was paying attention. Even Blake Snell, like he acted early. And the fear of acting early is what if I'm the team that gives out the big money deal and everybody else ends up clamming up? But it seems to have worked out the opposite now because the Blake Snell deal feels like Andrew Friedman got ahead of the market on that one.
Yeah, it really does. Like we thought it was a fair deal when the night that we were on and it was announced.
Yeah.
It looks better now.
Better.
It really does.
Yeah. And it continues to grow, which I think just, speaks to, again, the intelligence of Andrew Friedman, the ability to read the market. I mean, that's part of it. It's not just identifying the right players, but then it's, can you read the market? Can you make offers at the right time? Can you press the right levers when it comes to leverage and pressure and saying like, this is the deal. It's here. It's not here. That kind of a thing. He seems to nail that. And look, I don't mean to take credit away from Andrew Friedman. It helps when you're recruiting people to beautiful Southern California, to a team that has proven it's going to be winning and playing meaningful baseball games every single year. And that has developed a reputation around the league as having a manager that people like playing for, having a good clubhouse culture, and being a place of development. So he kind of has everything working in his favor, probably other than income taxes. I would say other than income taxes, the Dodgers setup is as good as there is in the league.
But that's what deferrals are for.
It's true. It's true. And they figured out a way around income taxes, Anthony, as a good point by you there. And yes, Amanda, I'm using my Andrew Friedman speak levers there, by the way, by the way, was it Teoscar Hernandez that they said they were optimistic about? And I just had Dave Roberts injury update flashbacks. It's like, hopeful. We're hopeful. This is going to be short. It's like, geez Louise, I need to wait. Give me 3 months before I have to start hearing hopeful and optimistic about uncertain situations. Please, Dodgers, please. All right, let's go on to the last topic here before we get to some questions. And this is an interesting one. Brandon Gomes, who now for the second time has gotten up in front of the media and just made some pretty bold statements. I'll give him this. It sounded like this time he was maybe a little more prepared, knew what he was going to say this time. A couple months ago, he said, hey, Mookie Betts is definitely playing in the infield. And everybody was like, why are you telling us this? Like, what's the motivation to give us this information now? We got clarity. It was clarity that, not to toot my own horn, that I predicted on this show, and it was not a popular opinion at the time, but that it's Mookie Betts is going to be the shortstop of the Los Angeles Dodgers next season. He's not going to be the second baseman. And so I've got 3 questions for you, Anthony, with the announcement that Mookie Betts is going to be the shortstop. Question number 1, Can he handle it? Can he actually play shortstop competently, Anthony? What do you say?
Yeah, I think so. I do. I really do. I'm not saying that he is going to win a Gold Glove. So everything else that I say doesn't mean that. I think he can handle the position competently, and I think he can do so. I think a big reason for that is he knew the day they won the World Series that this was going to be his future. I think these discussions were already being had. So he's going to have all winter and all spring to be preparing for that assignment. Whereas last year he had like a week to prepare, and then was
like
basically
10
learning
days
on
or
the
12
fly
days or
every
something
day.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then was just learning on the fly every day. And then, and then the injury and just kind of threw everything into flux. So given all that prep time, knowing the kind of athlete Mookie Betts is, he's going to be in shape. We know that, all of that stuff with him. Yes, I'm very confident that he can be a competent shortstop.
Yeah, I'm with you. And to clarify, people in the chat, I never said that it's more popular now. I'm just saying it's happening. And I understand the reasons why people are skeptical of it. I disagree on why some people are skeptical. My views on Gavin Lux, which we're going to get to here in just a second. But I understand completely the skepticism around two things. One is we've seen him play and it was below average. And two, wait a minute, isn't the whole point of moving him to the infield that this is going to be like easier on his body, and is putting him at shortstop maybe way worse for him than some of the alternative options? I agree with you on can he play shortstop. I think the answer is going to be yes this season. Can he play shortstop forever? I don't know. But can he play shortstop this year with a full offseason to prepare for it, a full spring training to prepare for it? I think he can. As people have pointed out, the issues for Mookie Betts were not, I can't remember where I heard this, but it was like the hard parts of playing shortstop were not too hard for Mookie Betts. The hard part for Mookie Betts playing shortstop was the throw. And that's really the simplest, most teachable piece of the whole thing. And so it wasn't going to his left or going to his right or the range or any of that. It was simply the arm. And we've seen Mookie Betts' arm. It's not like he can't throw. I think he's just got to figure out that throw in particular, feel confident to where he can let it rip. So I think he can do that. Now, I entirely agree with, hey, which this is my second question. Is this temporary, Anthony? And temporary in the sense of for 2025, and then that's it. And then he's going to second base in 2026. Or is it possible with Gavin Lux, who's got a few more years of team control left, and we're going to get specifically to Lux in a second, but like, is this a 1 year stopgap, Anthony? Or do you think this could be a 2-3 year stopgap?
Yeah, I don't think it's temporary in the way that I don't think he's the shortstop for the rest of his contract.
Okay.
Maybe it's beyond this season. But I would say, that's around it. I do think he stays in the infield for the rest of his contract for the most part.
Okay.
I think this has a lot to do with them doing right by Mookie Betts.
Yeah. Blake's in the chat. Blake just made an interesting point in the chat in saying that moving him to the infield might not actually have anything to do with the wear and tear on his body and be entirely about Mookie Betts wants to play shortstop. Like, do you buy that as possible?
Yes, absolutely. I missed that from Blake, but I think Blake is right. This is, I really do think this is about them keeping Mookie Betts happy. I think this discussion has been happening for a while. This is not a new thing for the Dodgers and Mookie Betts. It's just been that circumstances have kept him in right field. When they tried to move him into the infield permanently this season, stuff happened and he ended up having to go back out to right field. I think now this is them saying, okay, we're going to give you all the time to prepare for this and, all of that. We know you want to play in the dirt. You've been saying it probably since you got here, because it was a thing with the Red Sox as well. He did not want to play right field. He was good at it, but he was just blocked, and he always wanted to play in the infield. He probably let that be known when he got to the Dodgers at some point. Look, when this door opens, I want to be the guy. Yeah. And you know what? The door's open right now. And it was open a bit last year too. Again, circumstances kind of threw a wrench into those plans. But I think that this has a lot to do with that. And I'm okay with that because, again, I think he could be a competent shortstop. And if you're going to do right by Mookie Betts in this way, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Dong, by the way, said this is permanent for now, which is,
Yeah.
you're a Dodger fan when.
Yes.
Okay, last one is, what does this mean for Gavin Lux? And specifically, I'll ask it this way. For a guy that has been put into every potential trade proposal by most of the fan base for the last 90 days, at least, does this mean that Gavin Lux is safe?
Safe for now.
Okay. I mean, but how long is for now? Like, do you
Yeah.
think Gavin Lux needs to worry about where he's living in 2025? Or do you think maybe he needs to keep open the possibility that 2026 he's got a new zip code?
I think if they had any intention of moving Lux, they would have talked Betts into playing second base and they would have figured out a stopgap.
Yeah.
I really do. I think Betts being named shortstop now is Lux being protected also.
Yeah.
That's, never say never, because if something comes along and it's like,
Sure.
holy crap, we got to do this, and he's part of it, then so be it. But what I do think this is just them saying, you know what, we have our middle infield for, our regular middle infield for the most part, maybe some platoon splits or some rest and things like that, whatever. But, I think this is what it is. And, with some of that depth that they have with other infielders, Chris Taylor, Rojas, Edman, guys who could all kind of circle into that when needed. I think this is what you're looking at for the Dodgers up the middle.
I love TQT says Lux needs to root hard for Betts to be a competent shortstop.
That's a great point.
It is, because if he's not, Gavin Lux will not outlive Mookie Betts as a Dodger. We all know that's the case. And if Mookie Betts wants to be playing the infield, and that's the place. Now, here's a few options for what this means for Gavin Lux. Option one is the Dodgers are simply maintaining leverage. They're walking back Brandon Gomes saying something a month and a half ago that he probably shouldn't have said as strongly, and saying, oh, no. When I said Mookie Betts is going to be an infielder, he's playing shortstop. Gavin Lux, basically the message to the league is Gavin Lux is not for free. Now, it's possible they're just walking it back a little bit and giving themselves a little bit of leverage to say, no, we don't need to trade Gavin Lux. Mookie Betts is playing shortstop for us. When in reality, they're very open to trading Gavin Lux, and they just wanted to protect a little bit of value there. That's possible. Option two is, as Fabian Ardaya came on our show and said, the Dodgers have repeatedly told us with their behaviors how they feel about Gavin Lux. They have given him every opportunity to succeed at shortstop. That didn't work. They didn't give up on him 2 months into last season when everybody was calling for it because he was so bad offensively. And he's still here today. He wasn't moved at the deadline. He wasn't moved so far in the offseason. He's still here. And so Fabian would say, they keep telling you, you can pretend like Gavin Lux is worth less than they think he is, but they've told you what they think of Gavin Lux. And so I think it could be either of those two. Like both of those are possible hindsight, looking back 3 months from now on this conversation saying, oh man, they were just, protecting the asset, or man, they really believe in Gavin Lux and we're going to find out if they're right or wrong.
Yeah. The protecting the asset thing, like, look, other teams look and they have professional scouting and they know what the numbers are and all that stuff. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, I don't think they're gonna be like, hey, he's our starting guy, so wink wink. Like,
but I mean, if the Dodgers went out and signed Willy Adames for $180 million and said Mookie Betts is playing the infield right now, you don't think teams around the league would be asking for a discount on Gavin Lux?
They're gonna ask for that anyway.
Well, but I mean, but the Dodgers have more ground to stand on it by saying no. Whereas the other team's going to say, okay, what are you going to do? Run Gavin Lux back as your fifth infielder who never plays? Like, that's you know what I'm saying? Like, I understand teams are smarter. They don't
sign Adames though without the intention then of moving probably Lux.
Yeah, right. Well, that's my point. Is like what they're doing now is they're saying he's valuable to us, and whether they're telling the truth or not remains to be seen. Real quick on this, and then we're going to get to some questions if you want to start filling the chat with those. Where are you at on Gavin Lux? Like, do you believe he's a guy they should move now because the value is never going to be higher? This is going to be a rough year, and they should just capitalize on the second half that he just had and the years of control remaining and trade him now? Or, man, I think there's a little something to this guy, and the further we get away from the knee injury, maybe the second half is a more clear picture of who he is than the first. Yeah,
man. Look, you and I did not sell through the first half of last season. I'm not selling now.
Yeah, fair.
I'm not
totally.
selling. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in just like the Dodgers front office is on him. Also, like, his value could get higher. If he starts out the way he was hitting last year, his value is as high as it's ever been. all of a
Yeah.
sudden. So yeah, look, I think that he is in their mix. And again, that's never say never, because something might come along and he might have to be part of it.
Yeah.
And that's fine, because I don't think they trade him for nothing. That it's going to be something significant if he's in a package. But going into opening day, I'm saying right now, I am okay with Mookie Betts and Gavin Lux being in the middle infield. I'm not saying either guy's a Gold Glove winner. I'm not saying either guy is an elite defensive player, but I'm okay with it. I'm comfortable with it. I think they're going to be good enough that the Dodgers can get away with putting them both out there.
Blake just sent this: trade Lux for Devin Williams, sign Gleyber Torres profit. Trading Gavin Lux for Devin Williams is insane to me.
That's got to be a joke.
Let's hope. I've seen some things that make me believe it might not be, but we'll see. Blake is also a professional troll, so it's possible he kind of lives in these two worlds where nobody knows if he's telling the truth or not. And yeah, that's crazy to me. Crazy talk to me, Blake, but I appreciate it.
That's like superpower.
Yeah, sure. If we want to call it that. Let's get to some questions here. Again, all caps questions. Throw those in the chat. We got about 5 or 10 more minutes. We'll get to some of these. TQT says, what do you think of going after Seiya Suzuki if Teoscar isn't re-signed? Their savant pages are very similar. The Cubs have put him on the trade block. 30 years old, right-handed hitter, which again, that's kind of one of the things that has started to matriculate is like, man, if Teoscar Hernandez doesn't come back, who's the right-handed hitter in the middle of this lineup? As he points out, the StatCast stuff for Suzuki is promising. 91st percentile hard hit rate, 87th percentile exit velocity, 94th percentile chase rate, which is fascinating. He has one of the worst strikeout rates in the league, but he never chases. So I'm not exactly how sure those two numbers fit in the same player, but that's I guess the Seiya Suzuki experience. But not necessarily a positive fielder, probably similar to Teoscar Hernandez. Part of the reason he wants to get traded is because the Cubs are trying to make him the DH. So that's worth pointing out. But any thoughts on Seiya Suzuki?
Not really. I don't think he's a realistic option right now. I also I don't think he's a Teo replacement.
Okay.
I kind of like, this is probably not a super popular opinion, but I kind of think they might have already signed their Teo replacement if that doesn't work out.
Okay. So you're zagging because most of the opinion is the Dodgers were always going to go get 2 corner outfielders, and Conforto has nothing to do with their pursuit of Teoscar Hernandez. You're not buying that.
No, that part I agree with.
Okay.
That part I do agree with. I think one does not have to do anything with the other, but if they miss on Teo, I think they may feel like they already have the guy who's going to fill his spot on the roster now.
Got it. Like, it's not that they don't, the options out there may not to them seem better than Andy Pages, Dalton Rushing, etc.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And so I think, with the Conforto, Rushing, like, all those guys, I think end up probably filling that spot possibly, versus them like going aggressive on somebody else on the market. I think there's other outfield options for them right now that they would look to. By
the way, professional troll Blake Williams, Suzuki is a better option than Teo. Sucks. So look, I love it. Blake's coming with the heat tonight, and I appreciate that. This is Blake, folks. Like, this isn't an act. It's just Blake. He's his authentic self, and you know what? I respect it. For the sake of content, I respect it. Larry asks, any concerns about the age of our lineup? Very few position players in their 20s. I've made the comment, and this isn't specifically related to age, but this is connected. Gavin Lux is the only guy that's hasn't hit free agency yet. So what that means is all of these guys have been in professional baseball for at least 7 years, and many of them much longer than that. Obviously, Will Smith had a couple of years bought out, so he's kind of the exception there. But it's not a young lineup. Any concern if you're the Dodgers for that?
They just won the World Series. I'm not concerned with anything to do with this lineup as long as they can all stay on the field.
Yes, they're not in their 20s, but there's a lot of guys in their prime.
For sure. I mean, before the hand thing, Mookie Betts was an MVP candidate. Shohei Ohtani won the MVP. Max Muncy can still hit the ball at an all-star level if he can, if there weren't injuries. Freddie Freeman is Freddie Freeman. Tommy Edman is a guy who looks like his stock is rising still, I think. So there's and we just talked about Gavin Lux. Like sure, they're not the youngest team, but that doesn't mean they're not the best team.
Yeah, I agree. Look, they are not aging out of their prime yet. Right. I understand the premise of the question. They've got some position player guys in the top of their farm system, the top meaning top of the rankings, not necessarily busting down the door, but you've got guys like Andy Pages, you've got guys like Dalton Rushing, who are closer. Obviously, whether you think Gavin Lux belongs in that category or not, whether you are holding on to your penny stock that is James Outman stock, that remains there. But I understand the concern, but I think we're a couple of years away from it being a real issue. I just have to throw this one up there. Cole says, can we trade Blake for one of those why am I a Mets fan podcast ladies? Sight unseen, I'm saying no. Blake is ours. He's not going anywhere, Cole.
He's dare you? Lux.
How dare you? Oh, geez, Louise. That might have been the most offensive thing you've ever said to him.
I mean, like Gavin Lux, bro.
Short of calling him James Outman, Anthony, I'm not sure you could have said anything else.
Well, slow down.
Or Walker Buehler. You could have called him Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler, Gavin Lux, or James Outman or borderline fighting words for Blake. So there you go. Cole, the answer is no. Okay. All I'm asking a question we kind of touched on. Nolan Arenado is a better average hitter and great third baseman than Max Muncy. With him in the lineup, top 3-4 batters get runners in scoring position opportunities. He might have a higher batting average. He has a far worse on-base percentage. Yes, he's better defensively. He has way less power, and he costs a lot more, and all of his offensive numbers are trending in the wrong direction. So that's the summary of the conversation we had on Arenado. Again, if they did not have a third baseman, like if we were talking about like, hey, I think Miguel Rojas is going to start at third base next year, or Kike Hernandez is going to start at third base, then sure, you can talk me into something like this, but sure, not with nowhere to put Max Muncy. GI asked a question that we've kind of danced around. If Teo does walk, any ideas for a right-handed bat to replace him? Cue the calls for Tommy Pham. Now Blake is back in. He's a big Tommy Pham guy. Dylan Carlson, Randall Grichuk. I joked about, can we convince Andrew McCutchen to learn how to play left field and just throw his corpse out there and see what happens? That guy still seems to be able to hit at 38 years old. There aren't any names. Seiya Suzuki, I think, is an interesting name. There's no names that like are free agents, I will say. I think they're going to be on the trade market if they feel the need to get a right-handed hitting corner outfield, would be my guess, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of answered this earlier where I think they may think that they already have these replacements on the roster. Conforto, Rushing, Pages, all the guys we've talked about. But Blake in the chat says, Luis Robert, come on down. Sounds like the asking price is going to be stupid still for him. So I don't know how real of an option that might be, but yeah, I just don't think there's a lot out there that is so appealing that they have to then get aggressive if they don't get Teo.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
And that's not to say that that's not to say that any of those guys are the ones who start game one in the playoffs next October. Yeah. I think the market can play out and something else can happen, after the winter.
Yeah, I'm with you. Alleluia says, if Bichette has a bounce back year and Lux isn't meeting expectations, do they do the trade? I don't think the suggestion here is that you would trade Lux for Bichette, because if these guys go in these directions, it would cost a lot more. I like Bo Bichette. I like the idea of potentially adding a guy who could be your long-term shortstop if that requires moving Gavin Lux and moving back Mookie Betts over to second base and Gavin Lux gets shipped out. Sure. But I like Bo Bichette. So it seems like a lot of people are out on Bo Bichette. So both of these are wait and see, I would say, for me. A couple more questions here. Signs stealing scandal says, is Max Muncy the opposite of Teoscar Hernandez? Fans are obsessed with the idea of replacing him with a worse player instead of opposed to replacing him with a better player. I kind of thought that, like, and again, people don't like this because they don't like this player. But when we were talking about Gavin Lux earlier, I was kind of like, this is a guy who's already here, who doesn't cost you very much money, and who like has given you at least some reasons to believe that he's going to be a competent, valuable player, and people cannot wait to get rid of him. And then Teoscar, it's like, there are legitimate reasons, as Blake has pointed out, for why you might be slightly concerned about Teoscar Hernandez beyond the next 18 months, whether it's his age, his strikeout rate, his ability to play defense. And it's like, we're rioting. Again, I'm not opposed to Teoscar. Okay. So the army of Teoscar Hernandez's people, back off. I had a guy on social media telling me today that like nobody wants Teoscar back. I'm like, buddy, come check out the chat on a DodgerHeads live show. Just peep the comments. I don't know what to tell you, but it is funny. I mean, let me ask it this way, Anthony. I asked Matt this question the other night. Can you think of a single player that in 1 year, as like a mercenary, this is the key piece on Twitter that I didn't clarify. I was thinking specifically a mercenary, like a guy they signed for 1 year, a guy they acquired at the deadline that so endeared himself to Dodgers fans so quickly that it was like, we are rioting if this player does not come back. Like, I'm not talking about long-term Cody Bellinger, Fernando Valenzuela. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about guys that like were here for a short time, and then the risk was they were going to be gone, and people were rioting. Can you think of anybody?
Yeah, Manny Ramirez.
Manny is the one guy that I think is a great answer to this.
Yeah, I mean, that was Manny Wood.
And that was short-lived, by the way. That didn't last all that long. It was short-lived.
No. But look, there's not no risk that the Teoscar situation could end up being something similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a guy who sort of took the fan base by storm in such a short period of time, that was it. This is a little bit of a different situation because he came up as a rookie, but Yasiel Puig.
Yeah, my guy. And again, he was kind of on a contract, so that's kind of why I would put him in a different category.
Yeah, different situation. But yeah, when you're talking about a guy who could leave after that, yeah, I think Manny Ramirez is the closest guy, at least in the recent memory.
Yeah. Okay. We got a few more questions and we'll be out of here. Eden says, does the inning limit for Shohei mean a late start to the season or cutting him short in the middle of a great performance because of a pitch count? He's already going to be starting late because he's recovering from non-pitching shoulder surgery. So his non-pitching shoulder surgery on that shoulder. So I just think it's going to be, hey, he's recovering from this. So it's a real thing. And also we're going to slow play the crap out of it once he comes back. So I think Shohei Ohtani, the first 2 months, maybe more of the season, he will not be pitching, and the Dodgers will sort of just be gearing him up for not only just the second half of the season, but for the rest of time. 2 more here. Zenji says reclamation project most likely to play in the World Series in 2025 for the Dodgers: Giovanni Gallegos or Joe Jocks. Do you have a preference? Gallegos is the interesting one, just because you see the name and you're like, this guy used to be nasty. It was a long time ago, but when they signed him, he was the guy I was like, oh, he's definitely pitching leverage innings in October.
I joked when that happened. I think I tweeted it out. I said, future closer.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, I think it's Gallegos to me.
Okay. Our guy David's got a food question. We'll go out on this one. 3,500 people in here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We appreciate you. He says, best Christmas mains and entrees: prime rib, baked ham, baked lasagna, or other. This one, if these are the 3 choices we're being given, and honestly, if you could make this unlimited, I've got an easy answer here. But does one of these jump off the page as the best Christmas entree, Anthony?
Not really. I'm not a big prime rib guy.
Oh man, geez, give me prime rib. Give me just a lot of prime rib is my answer to this question.
Yeah, I'm all right on that. It's fine, but it's not like,
or chicken fettuccine Alfredo is the other option here, Anthony.
I'm looking at that baked lasagna though, and that's not bad there.
Okay, ham is my go-to. Ham is my go-to, but if prime rib was an option, I would take that every day.
Okay, yeah, I'm not a big like traditional Christmas like meal guy. Yeah. We're gonna have tamales and I'm gonna make a brisket.
There you go. See, brisket's nice too.
Yeah, so I'll be throwing that thing on at like 5 a.m. or something like that. But out of these choices here, I might roll with the baked lasagna, especially if my man David is providing it, because I know he can.
Yeah, we've seen some of those pictures. Yeah, we do enchiladas on Christmas. We got a couple food allergies and kids what kids are willing to eat. So we do Thai food on Christmas Eve and we do enchiladas on Christmas Day, and it's great. It's great. So there we go. All right, everybody, that'll do it for us tonight. We appreciate you joining us here on DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. That is Anthony Witrado. I am Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest news and notes. Make sure you're following Dodger Blue 1958 on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter as well. And if you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, and Google, please check us out there. I see a moderator saying we need to have a Red Robin conversation. We'll save that. Sunday night, Matt and I discussing Red Robin. Bookmark it. We had a text message conversation. I got some things to get off my chest, some things we agree on. But Sunday night, that's the tease. I mean, we're going to have 55,000 people in here on Sunday night just waiting for the conversation about Red Robin's Ranch. That's the tease I'll give you. Enjoy the rest of your night, everybody. As always, go Dodgers. And of course, still champs.